Welcome to another episode of the Programmatic Digest podcast. I am your host, Ellen Parker, and my hair is still down. I let my hair down. I took off my glasses because this conversation is about to be like that. We're going to listen. It's a lot going on. In the previous episode, I talked about Adalytics' first report. We defined MFAs according to the industry. We also talked about frequency capping. In this episode, we're going to talk about the most recent research study that Adalytics published in April, where they pointed out a lot of great things. And so we're going to talk about this one, but also we're going to talk about what I'm hoping you get by the end of this episode is understanding what this research was about, how important it is, but also how you can implement in your day-to-day. And so let's get right to it. If you have not yet listened to episode 148, I strongly recommend that you go back and listen to it because it was a lot of great information. And also we define MFAs. We talk about how to determine what MFAs look like as a trader, somewhat how to determine, because it's not easily and visually easy to see in your report when you're optimizing. We talked about the biggest difference between ANA report back in June 19, 2023, and that research. Now, in the second research, I really listen. So first of all, the second research that just came out on this research came out March. Oh, that was an update. So it came out in March, and in April there were updates about this research. So he goes back and studies. So it's not a set it and forget it again with Christoph. He goes back and really studies his stuff. Okay, so this research is titled "Does Forbes Operate Made for Advertising Pages and Transact?" Hold on. Yes. Does Forbes operate made for advertising pages and transact misdeclared ad inventory? So in the previous episode, I explained how a little bit how this was discovered. The biggest thing about MFA is that some of those sites are creating, hence just for the sole purpose to place advertising on them, advertisement. One of the biggest thing that Adalytics discovered is that Forbes, the www.forbes.com site, the MFA site that Forbes created 7 years ago, apparently, because this has been going on for 7 years, but that site was not easily indexed. Let me say that again. Okay. So I think one of the biggest thing about the Forbes situation and most MFAs, to be quite frankly, is that those sites are specifically prohibiting Google's bot or Bing's bot, like those crawlers, from indexing on those specific pages or those subdomain where they're hosting all these ads. And so it discouraged the consumer from finding these ads easily on the Google or on the Bing when they're Googling for it. So I think that's not the easiest way, but that's one of the main differentiator on how they're able to determine, like, wait a minute, why would this site not want to be crawled by, if that's English, crawled by those Google bots or those Bing bots and send traffic organically to the site, right? So that means that they're made only for paid traffic, and that's a big red flag. One of the many red flags. And so in episode 148, basically, we really cover those differences. Okay. So in this report, he's over here calling us for real. He's telling us what's up. So the biggest point about it. So let me start with an overview of, like, a big summary of it. Okay. Again, I've been spending a lot of time in the report, spending a lot of time on the interweb, reading ad exchanges, Digiday, exchange wires, media posts, LinkedIn, because LinkedIn is another one, y'all. You be finding a lot. LinkedIn is my new dang, I'm not going to say Twitter feed, but back in the days before Twitter became X, excuse me, I got a lot of great insight, industry insight from key leading influencers, I would say, good influencers of our industry. Now I'm getting the same thing from my LinkedIn feed. I have curated my LinkedIn feed to look that way though. And even though it's different platform, it's different type of, communication style, I feel like my LinkedIn is now my new Twitter feed in a good way, like in a respectful, honorable way. Will I ever go back to Twitter? I don't know, y'all. I do miss some of my Twitter folks, but anyway, going back to Forbes. So let me summarize. Again, this episode, we're going to summarize the second Adalytics report. I'm going to talk about exactly what you need to know in order to implement in your day-to-day. We kind of already talked about frequency capping the last episode. I'll just redefine that really quick. And then we'll introduce the following episode. So episode 150 about programmatic curation. Okay, so let's get to it. So here's an overview. I'm going to read from my notes here. Forbes has a subdomain called www3, the letter 3, the number 3.forbes.com that has a different ad experience compared to the main domain. That subdomain, www3 subdomain, exposes readers to a significantly higher number of ads. Some experts classified it as an MFA, made for advertising or made for arbitrage. The readership of that www3 subdomain primarily comes from paid display ads. And I'll take a quick pause here, but what he means by, he actually has Loom's link, like where he's showing you how he landed on that www3 Forbes website. Obviously, today is April something, mid-April at this point. The site is down, so you won't be able to like Google it for real or directly input that link and find it. As of that day, as of April, mid-April at least, you're unable to do that. And so he recorded it to show us how he landed, how it's easy to land onto this website. So I'll add those Loom links pulled directly from the research into the job description, into the show's note, into the YouTube description, so that you can go and see. I think it's a 3-minute video, and then there's a 20-minute video where he like literally show you like, yo, this is actually how MFA paid traffic happens. So it's a really good, information insight for you to know and to understand how this is. Okay, so back to my review here. So the readership of that subdomain, www3 subdomain, are mainly from paid traffic, like platforms like Taboola and Outbrain, while the main domain receives most of the readership through organic search and direct navigation. So that's again, paid traffic and organic traffic. The subdomain does not have a subscriber paywall and is not indexed by search engine. It's also redirect users to the main domain unless they have a specific URL or click on an Outbrain ad. Let me see, because, taking notes and stuff. The subdomain serves direct sold ads for major brands and has been operating for several years. I think Anthony Vargas on The Addiction just said something like 7 years. It was 7 whole years. Some of these brands has been, anyway. Many ad verification vendors and DSPs were observed transacting on this subdomain, the www3 subdomain, raising question about their enforcement of inventory policies. Like, damn, like what's going on? So again, a little background about MFA, what you would want to know, and a little definition here is that MFA sites use clickbait, low quality content, and aggressive monetization tactics to generate ad revenue. They often have poor design, generic content, and high ad content ratio. It seems like over 70%. So the www3.forbes.com subdomain source over 70% of its audience traffic from paid display served through Taboola and Outbrain. The ads on this subdomain are presented in listicle format or carousel slides with a high number of ad refreshes, resulting in consumers seeing over 200 ad impressions in a few minutes. The subdomain uses templated page structures with multiple ads served alongside images with text and things like that. Forbes specifically instruct Google and Bing not to index. So again, the whole thing, listen, it may come across repetitive, but it's so important to differentiate and understand. Okay. So now let's start breaking down what the implication, okay, of MFA and particularly of this Forbes research is that there were supply side platforms observed transacting on that website, on that subdomain www.3.forbes.com, and also some demand side platforms. And so some of those SSPs and DSPs have served, I guess, their brands on that. So he calls out some of that. And let me just explain particularly what that means. Like this study really points out like the behavior of the hidden subdomain, but which aligns with the MFA definition, but several supply side partners or platforms, SSPs, transacted on that subdomain as well, including some that transacted misdeclared ad inventory on certified, or some of those SSPs. Let me refresh this. So let's really talk about a particular point where he brings out the SSPs transacting on the WW3 subdomain, where he said that those SSPs are also certified against fraud by Trustworthy Accountability Group, TAG. Okay, so that means that TAG, let me read it again. Trustworthy Accountability Group, the company TAG, certifies some of those SSPs whatever traffic they are providing or supply or inventory that they provide, that they supply is legit, is fine. You go ahead and tag, go ahead and bid on it or buy them. So some of those are tag certified and including transacting misdeclared and ad inventory. Information like the study also reveals that certain SSPs transmit misdeclared page URL information to DSPs like the Trade Desk. So what that means is that I think when I hear that companies are certified by, let's say, brand safety companies, or that they have this certification that makes sure that everything they do is legit, but they got caught. I just want to highlight something here, is that I don't want us traders, buyers, to go and start excluding everybody in their mamas, except for maybe starting excluding this one. What I'm trying to say is that this study is showing us that despite the best way I can listen, you've heard me say this, but you got to trust and verify. I think we trusted without verifying. Okay. And that even though some of those companies have been certified by like companies like TAG, we still got to verify, and we still got to allow ourselves to dive deeper into this data and down to the log file to really assess, like, okay, is this for real or is it not for real? Obviously, what I'm suggesting is can be very manually demanding on a trader. Like, they have to pull this report, they have to spend time reviewing the site, they have to click through some of these sites to assess if this site checks off some of this MFA definition checklist y'all are telling us to, but ultimately, if you want to be efficient, if you want to be productive, you're going to have to partner up, right? So that's what I've been asking you to do. You got to partner up with some of them, and I'm not getting paid by them. It would be nice though to be sponsored by them, but today, at least mid-April, I'm not yet. So the whole reason is because I was a trader. I spent a lot of time reviewing sites, understanding, like, a lot of those sites sometimes optimizing a site list can be very intuitive. Like I will log into some of these sites for a brand that's spending millions of dollars a month, a quarter, a year. It doesn't matter how much money you're spending. And then realize like aesthetically, this is not appealing to me. And going back to my KPI, which I optimized based off, it's not performing. And so that's how I exclude. What I'm asking you to do is to continue practicing this exercise that is SBO, from a buy side perspective, that is, optimizing your site list and your supplier. But now take it one step further, where when you see that a bunch of sites are not performing, pivot inside of your Excel, go ahead and pivot the SSP, then pivot a seller. Assess if this SSP that's providing some of these sites that are not performing based on that KPI. Again, I'm not even looking at the MFA definition just yet. And bear with me because I'm going back. I'm going to come back to the whole point that I'm trying to make about Forbes, right? The SSPs and tag particularly. But when you're pivoting in that extra dimension that is your SSP or your seller, now you understand if you can assess if that SSP provided predominantly site that should be excluded or site that should be included. When you discover that predominantly based off your KPI or your performance objective, that this SSP has provided predominantly exclusion sites or sites that you should exclude or cut out, then you reach out to the SSPs and demand a refund. Usually when you put a dollar amount around it, that's when they're like, oh shucks, things are, this is about we probably cannot do it, but here's what we can do. Or you simply just exclude the SSP to start with. I'm sorry, I have to say that. Because in the next episode, we're going to talk about programmatic curation. What do you think programmatic curation means? It means I'm not targeting everybody and their mamas. I'm curating the way I'm targeting. I'm curating by targeting specific deals from specific partners, that's those SSPs. Okay. Now back to Adalytics. The biggest thing about what I'm seeing is that even though those companies that are certified by the bigger brand safety companies are cut, it doesn't mean that we should stop working with them. It means that we need to verify. Okay. All right. So yes. So even though website like, DSPs like the Trade Desk or SSPs like Pubmatic, Magnite, big names, right, have been dropped in this research, I don't think we should run and stop working with these partners. I don't think we should stop and you should start excluding everybody's and their mamas that you see in those reports. What I'm encouraging you to do is to start verifying more. Okay. And to reach out to your partners and ask them, I saw your name here. What are you actually doing? Explain yourself. I'm going to start looking into my own data. I'm going to request this type of transparency from you or this type of measurement tool to help me really assess and make decisions. Because let me tell you something. Let me break down something to my friends on the SSP side, my friends on the ad tech side. As a trader, when I'm optimizing, I have my KPI, CPA of $20 or frequency. Yeah, I know there's a KPIs where we have a reach and frequency KPI objective. And so if my CPA should be at $25, let's say, and I have a secondary KPI that's impression count, and then I have a third KPI that is I don't know, attention metrics or viewability of X, like that's how I'm making my decisions. I'm gonna go down my own checklist that is heavily KPI focused and make the decision based on that. So even though those reports, the Adalytics reports, are pointing out how things is still messy, we still make our decision based on KPIs. And sometimes that KPI is down to that one metric, which is a CPA, a CPM, a CPC, a CTR, whatever you want to call it, a conversion rate, a ROAS, or something like that. And so when one of the buyers reaches out to you and say things are not working, it's because it's KPI based. So even though we may still be bidding on MFA sites, because again, visually we cannot see it when we're optimizing our report, we're going to decide to exclude or include based on my CPA. If I'm spending a lot of money on this one site, my CPA is outrageous. That means that my conversions are low. Most likely it's a math problem here. It's formula, it's algebra 101 or algebra, whatever. It's a math problem. How do I make sure to decrease my CPAs to increase the conversion count without increasing the total cost? And so we it's like a formula game. We're trying to make decision based on that one formula for our clients, because in that monthly report, in that weekly report, in that QBR back with the brand, we got to explain why our CPA is a certain number, or why our ROAS is a certain number, or why that impression count is a certain number. For real talk. So so for my friends on the sales side and the ad tech side, that's how a buyer will operate. And if you're a buyer and you're not operating for real like this yet, I have many training videos on YouTube that shows exactly how to optimize a data provider list, site supply, and seller list. It's on our YouTube, or you can go to my website, helenparker.com/programmatic training sample, I think. Programmatic training, something like that. The link is going to be, I'm going to add a QR code, and the link is going to be in the job description, in the show's description, the show notes, or the YouTube description, or you can DM me on LinkedIn and I'll send it to you. But my whole point is that I'm showing you how to do this stuff manually, obviously, first, because you got to understand how to do it manually before you can work with some certain partners, or at least that's what I believe. One doesn't exclude the other, though. So Adalytics, honestly, like, we're gonna have to do our due diligence as buyers to go and assess, this is what's happening, this is why we're making this decision. But like the ad tech and the SSPs and the supply side, when you hear me say exclude a SSP, is not all, it's basically just because of this KPI. In many of my training videos, I'm like, exclude these, include those, is how we make those decisions, is based on that KPI. Sorry, if we were playing a drinking game, everyone will be drunk by now, the amount of time I'm saying this. But the biggest thing is based on that KPI again. So from a DSP perspective, from a buyer perspective, we do put a lot of trust in our DSP. The DSP tells us that they are working on their end to only work with partners that, say that they're doing what they're doing, basically. Okay. And so for you as a trader, if you come across a partner or an SSP that is in this Adalytics report, but that you're reading, that you also see in your campaigns, like, before you exclude them, again, make that decision based on your performance. Okay. Because it's a case by case thing here. But also, if you have any doubt that this particular SSP is not performing, listen to your gut. Excuse me. Listen to your gut. Listen to your exclude them, but don't keep that SSP excluded for everything else, right? Reach out to them, explain that you've excluded their supply, their supply inventory, because they're not performing based on this decision. Okay. So yes. And here's another thing too, is that I think unintentionally, this is giving some publishers specific like to news site, maybe new local news site, a bad rep. But please don't go excluding news because it's negative. Oh shit, the whole industry is negative at this point if we had to do this. Don't exclude local news or news site because of one bad apple. Okay. I think it's important to support journalism by making sure that they're funded. And sometimes advertising does that straight up, right? So for brands, targeting local news is key. It's strategic. It's a good thing still, because that's what it is. I would say if you had to, if you wanted to do it the right way, or you had doubts that your the open exchange is not maybe full of MF. No, hold on. If you have certain doubt, then this is when you want to reach out to your DSP partner, or reach out to those sellers directly. Reach out to somebody like NewsGuard, who curates and have not only AI, but real humans actually looking, searching through all type of news out here in these streets, and identifying if this one is legit, this one has MFA. They're working with other partners like Jones Media, Deep Sea, Adalytics, and things like that to really make sure that they're providing things. So my whole point for this conversation is these studies are important to keep us aware of what's happening. I want you to remember to trust, but also verify. Trust and verify. Trust and verify. It's just like my daughter is 4 years old, and sometimes she brushes her teeth on her own, and sometimes I let her do it on her own, and sometimes I'm like, come here, let me smell it, make sure you didn't miss a spot. I want her, I want her to brush her teeth on her own. I want her to be confident. I want her to be confident to brush her teeth on her own, but to also understand everything that's happening. And me verifying after her doesn't mean that I'm not trusting, although I don't do it all the time. It just means that, hey, Jade, I know you're a big girl and you know how to brush your teeth on your own, but let me just make sure you didn't miss a spot. Let me help you out. This is what a team does. We are a team. This is what family does. Okay, not in our cases, but for her, I told her this is what family does. We look out for each other. We make sure we're good, and sometimes we help each other down to making sure you didn't miss a tooth. And sometimes I go after her and brush it, because when I smell her breath, I can tell she only brushed something one side and not the other, right? And so, although I'm not comparing you to brushing my 4-year-old teeth, but although she's my favorite person in the world, that's why I talk about my kids. But yeah, so trust and verify. Don't go excluding everybody that you see in this report. Reach out to them, ask them exactly like, what are you doing in our cases? I would also say that when you are making decision, I think making a KPI based decision is still the way to go, because MFAs, to be honest, like we all know. We don't know if it's MFA or not, unless we're working with some of them that tells us it's MFA, right? And they're telling us, and we have to trust that they're telling us the truth. I will say the last thing I will say for this in this conversation is that what Adalytics pointed out in Forbes is that it's nothing new. It's another form of site spoofing, I believe. So if you're working with ad verification tools like I think Moat and Method Media Intelligence, or any or Adalytics or Jones Media or Deep Sea, they have the capabilities to show you in details these sites are spoofed, or these ads are refreshes every 2 seconds or whatnot, right? So it's important to have an ad verification tool. I don't know if any DSPs have specific, yeah, I don't know actually, but so DSPs do have verification tools implemented in them, but what I'm saying is that, for instance, I remember with Moat, working with Moat and logging into their dashboard and specifically seeing this placement, because I was running in CM360 and DV360 at the time. This placement had 20% of IVT, invalid traffic, and some of them came from spoofed sites. The percentage of this, some of them are data centers, things like that, like in a dashboard where you could clearly see the difference between the IVT, the bot or non-fraudulent, and things like that. Like, I don't know if there's this level of transparency in the DSP report, but what I can confirm is that most DSP already have some level of that, within their engine, right? Within their DSP. And so it's still safe to continue working with our partners as traders. It is safe to continue calling and having this conversation. And not everybody knows how to go or how to fix it just yet. But in order to move forward, we're going to have to keep communication open. And that means picking up the phone and talking to each other and having real ass conversation and cutting off the fluff. Cut the fluff. Please listen. This is for my sell side folks, my ad tech folk, on behalf of all the buyers and traders out there. We're not interested in the fluff. We want to know exactly. Show us the car facts. Pull up the receipt. I want to see exactly how, like, I ask the same question to the same people sometimes because the answers is not clear to me. And I am smart. Okay. And I know I can understand concept. And if not, I have ChatGPT and WordTree. If not, I have people that I could ask though. But my whole point is that ask those questions over and over. If you're unclear, then they're not explaining it the right way. Okay. So inspire, encourage your partners to really explain it in a way that you're going to understand. It's okay. It's okay to ask the same questions multiple times because you really want to understand. So please cut the fluff for us. We want to see the Carfax. We want to understand exactly how the mechanics of the engines are working. We want to see under the hood. Okay. And we don't need to be engineered to understand how things are functioning, but we need to see it. At this point, we need to see it. Okay. And I had one last point before moving forward is that, which leads into next week's episode about programmatic curation, y'all. It's another terms we have to learn about, even though it's just another, I feel like it's a fancy way of calling private marketplace. But that's just stay tuned for next week for that. Okay, so all right. Before I end this podcast, if there's 3 things I want you to remember from this particular episode 149, is that Forbes got caught, y'all. They got caught. And apparently it was happening for 7 whole years or plus. That's 1. 2, the second point I want you to remember is that a lot of our partners that we know and work with on a daily basis are mentioned in those reports. Yeah, it's not a good look. It ain't a good look for them. But let's not start excluding, cutting them off of the conversation. I think this is a great opportunity to bring them even closer to the conversation by explaining how we make decisions as buyers. And which leads into the third point for my sell side, my ad tech side, as a trader, as a buyer, as somebody who's activated campaigns and still is in many DSPs. The way we train our traders, our programmatic ninjas, in making those decisions is on the KPI base, honestly, for real. Whether the KPIs is awareness, which is not a KPI, this is an objective. Whether the objective is awareness and the KPI is impression count or CPM lower and things like that, we are still making most of our decision based on that. Now, what we train, okay, that maybe traders don't always do because they're not trained to do, and that said respectfully and with honor here, is that you should not make most of your decision based on the one KPI. The one KPI should help you make decision, yes, but you should always layer a second KPI. That makes sense, right? Like it has to correlate with what you're the objective, the overall awareness objective. And I go through some of these in my training. And so if you're interested, I'll drop it's on my YouTube. I have some YouTube data provider, SPO. I have decks that I can send you if you just request it. Again, the link will be here, or I'll drop a QR code if the QR code is not here. Oh, well, the link is down there. I would also say that the last thing I want to remember is that this is the best time to start building your supply toolbox. Okay. You're hearing a lot of SPO, you're hearing curation, which is what we're going to cover in the next one. But it's simply like, who are you going to start buying from direct? Who is easily plugged in? Which pipeline can you access in within the DSP and things like that? Okay. Yeah. See you next week for programmatic curation deals and explaining. And the reason why I want to talk about it after the Adalytics report is because Adalytics reports showed us that, we still have a serious problem by MFAs, but we need to have closer conversation with our partners. And it's also up to the activation side, the buyer side, to lead those conversations. On the sell side, I need y'all to show us the Carfax. I need you to cut the fluff, the whole like the measurement attribute. No, I need you to really show us what's up. And then lastly, we should continue looking our performance. Like, you got to spend time in your performance in your campaign to understand. And I'll drop honorable mentions here. Like, if you know your team doesn't have enough time to look into it, like, we want them to be strategic thinkers, strategic buyers, and not so much automated buyers. Like, that's real. Like, I don't want you to just go and do things like routinely. That's different than being productive, right? And so partner with Chalice algorithm or side bids or any other companies that help you make decision more efficiently, and allow those traders to be strategic partners on this campaign, because now they don't have they're spending less time on manually mundane tasks, and now they're able to really look at, oh, this is what we're able to decide. That's such an important role of a trader and a buyer, and that's what we want to do more of, honestly. We don't want to keep doing these day-to-day stuff. So if you're listening to this without listening to episode 148, go back and listen to 148. I cover definition of MFAs, and much more. Thank you so much, and see you next week.